Good afternoon. We will get started in just a couple minutes.
Perfect.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you all for joining. We'll talk a little bit first about the law firm. I'll introduce myself as well as Alexis, and then we'll get into the meat of what we're talking about is we're all in a place to start returning to work, opening our businesses back up. So Epiphany Law, who are we? We're a boutique business law firm. We have attorneys, consultants, support team, and we collaborate together to meet the needs of our clients. We're different than your average law firm. First, we believe in education and empowerment, and so these webinars are our way to embody that. Also, you'll notice through our webinars and the other resources that we offer that we boil down the complicated stuff into things that the average business owner can understand. Finally, we're proactive, not reactive. So while other law firms might enjoy when things blow up on a client because it means they get to increase their fees and means a lot of more billing for them, we enjoy working with our clients to help ensure that mistakes don't happen proactively. So I'm Tracy Melvin. I'm an attorney at Epiphany Law. I focus on employment law, human resources, and business law. I spent over 10 years in HR prior to attending law school at Marquette. I've been with the firm since September. I did start in an HR consulting role, consulting our clients on all things HR, but I did wrap up law school this month, and I'm excited to now be an attorney with the firm. Allie.
Hi everybody, I'm Alexis or Allie Merbach. I'm an attorney here at Epiphany, been here for about a year now. My primary focus areas are intellectual property law, so your copyrights, trademarks, patents, all that good stuff. Also do some privacy and data security work as well as exit and succession planning. Like Tracy, I'm from Marquette, so I'm happy that she's graduated and joined us full time today.
Okay, so what are we going to talk about today? Well, some businesses have remained open over the last couple months. Maybe they've modified operations so that they could have appropriate social distancing. Many businesses have been completely closed or operated with just a skeleton crew for weeks or months. Now that states are lifting some restrictions, as of today, all 50 have some sort of restriction lifted, more businesses can reopen. Before they do that, though, and allow employees to return to work, any business needs to consider, what is this new normal going to look like for us? So what we're going to talk about today is how do you determine when to open, planning whether all or only certain employees are going to return, ensuring employee safety upon return, responding to employee concerns, anticipating and managing various leave requests, complying with the all sorts of employment laws in light of this new norm, and creating or revising policies. One thing to note as we talk about things throughout this presentation, there is a chat box, a Q&A box. So if you have questions throughout, definitely feel free to jump in there and ask those questions. Alexis is reviewing those and will pass those off to me throughout the presentation. We did receive a number of questions prior to the presentation, so I did review those this morning, have updated the presentation to reflect the questions we had come in so far. So hopefully all your questions that you've sent in will be answered during the presentation. But again, feel free at any time to ask a question throughout. So when to open? As businesses are contemplated reopening, there are so many things to consider. I'm sure all of you on the call have seen that that is changing daily, if not hourly. So what order is currently in place at your location? Wisconsin has the statewide order overturned, but every state is making different decisions on when it's appropriate for businesses to reopen. And as we've seen, even cities or counties, Madison most recently as yesterday, are issuing guidance and various orders on how businesses can reopen and how things are going to look in the coming weeks and months. So now that you have evaluated, okay, what county am I in, what state am I in, what order is in place, who's going to make the decision to reopen? It's very important to gather a team of valued leaders to ensure that all things are considered as your business open. This might include a finance officer to look at the money side of things on reopening, human resources, safety, is your facility office space safe for return, facilities management, among many other individuals that are important to your organization. Each of these employees provides a unique perspective based on his or her area of expertise and can help the business owner make a decision that's best for employees, customers, and the business. So now that you have your team gathered, you're ready to reopen, how are you going to notify employees and who's going to make those calls? So really important to think through what was communicated when the employees were either furloughed or laid off, and then consider any policies that you have in place regarding recalling employees. Next, what does implementation look like? Will you reopen your business all at once, business as usual? Did you determine that your business falls under some sort of order that limits the number of customers allowed or limits the number of employees or how you are able to operate? Are you seeing that your business just has been, ramping down and that means that you're going to reopen in phases? Keep in mind the CDC has constantly been issuing good guidance for how employers can make sure that they're opening safely. Mostly recently yesterday, they issued like a 60-some page document. Yes, these are all really, really long and fun to read. A guide to help employers, help businesses determine how to reopen safely. They've also issued some decision trees, which are nice one-pagers, much easier to understand to kind of go through an if this, then this process to determine how to reopen safely. So you know that you're going to reopen, you have some employees off. Now, how do you get them back? Many considerations when we're recalling employees back to the workplace. Is this a time to consider performance of employees and determining who returns if you're not bringing everybody back? Even if you are bringing everybody back, is this a time to consider performance? I say yes, absolutely. It's a time to evaluate who you want to have on your team on a go-forward basis. Can your business support all employees returning or just some? And who are going to be the team of talent that you bring back? If employees lost any benefit eligibility while they were laid off, are they able to re-enter benefit plans? What does your plan document say? Do you need to connect with your benefit provider to make sure that you're understanding how to get these employees back on some sort of benefit that they may have lost while they were off? If your business is receiving PPP loans or other loans that have requirements in them, are you maintaining a certain headcount for that PPP loan? So again, that's why I said, the team determining how to reopen, when to reopen, include your finance folks, because we want to make sure that you're not doing any harm to any of the loans that you've taken out over the last month or so. What do you do if an employee refuses to return or already found alternate employment? Do you have a recruitment strategy to backfill any of those vacancies? Or if you have determined that some employees were not performing prior to this and you're not going to bring them back, do you need to backfill them, and what does that recruitment plan look like? If your business is furloughed employees, what's the callback procedure? So for example, were employees told that they needed to respond to a call to return within 24 hours, 36 hours, 1 week? If they don't respond, are you prepared to terminate their employment? What does that look like? Most businesses are going to bring furloughed employees back first, but did you also have employees on layoff? And what is the callback procedure for those? Is it similar to what you had for furloughed employees? Is it different? Have you kept in contact with these furloughed and laid off employees throughout the last few weeks, knowing whether or not they are going to be able to return? And again, same thing with the furloughed employees. What if the laid off employee doesn't respond timely? At what point in time do you want to end their employment? If you determine that not all employees are able to be brought back due to decline in business or some sort of order in place just not allowing all employees to come back yet, and some still need to remain on a layoff, your business can consider Wisconsin's Work Share program. This program is designed to help employers avoid layoffs by reducing an employee's hours during a time where business is slow. So the program's intent is to keep employees working and covered under employer benefit plans while still letting them have just a prorated version of unemployment benefits. It was a program available pre-COVID, but the state has recently relaxed some of the program's requirements, so it's more accessible for employers. The revised rules will stay in place through the end of this year, and some of those include that plans normally needed to apply to greater of 20 positions or 10% of the employees in a work unit, but now these plans may cover at least 2 employees. Also, the participating employees' reduction in hours used to be that it could not exceed 50%, but now participating employees' hours may be reduced by anywhere between 10 and 60%. To participate, the employer just needs to submit an application to the Department of Workforce Development. The application outlines information about the employees who are going to be participating, the reduction in their hours, and once the plan is approved, keep in mind that the federal government is paying 100% of these unemployment benefits through the plan that are paid through the plan. So that is something that's a benefit for the employer. So let's talk through employee safety. You've determined you're going to reopen, and at least some, if not all of your employees are going to be returning. And employee safety, while it's always important, there's even more safety considerations during a pandemic. So consider scheduling strategies that will reduce contact between employees. Some of this might be telework. So have employees been able to perform their job duties from home? It's okay to consider allowing them to do that for the coming weeks or months if it's been something that's worked out well for your business. Multiple shifts. Maybe you're in an industry where you can have multiple shifts that are going to reduce the number of employees in your building at any given time. Can you have additional days of operation? Maybe you're Monday through Friday and you can add a Saturday so that you have less individuals in the building on each day. And if you're unable to do any of what I've just talked about, maybe you're just staggering meetings or allowing employees to join meetings via Zoom or Microsoft Teams from their office instead of being in a conference room. Also, staggering meetings allows you to make sure that you have time to clean those conference rooms in between meetings.
Tracy, we did have one question. Apologies if you'll get to this one, but someone asked if you have service people riding multiple employees in a worker service truck. Is there any recommendation for that or any guidance out there on how they should handle situations when employees can't separate?
Perfect lead into the protective gear. So it could be a recommendation that those employees are wearing masks. You know, you're keeping sanitizer in these vehicles, and that there's a mask requirement to make sure that everybody's safe. I see a number of employees, including many counties, are implementing the mask requirement. We know that not only in the vehicles, but there's manufacturing lines that are already built and they're not going to be rebuilt during this time. And it's just not possible to maintain social distancing with the current arrangement. So consider, what can you do? Does that mean there's additional face coverings? Does that mean that you can have certain, like I've seen plexiglass between certain areas in the manufacturing line? You know, get creative with how you can keep your employees safe. Keeping additional hand sanitizer, cleaning supplies, gloves, whatever you feel is appropriate if you're unable to maintain the appropriate social distancing. Other things you could do is maybe employees aren't allowed to use certain rooms that don't have the ability to have social distancing. I've seen employers make recommendations that their group, like break rooms, lunch rooms, they're making changes to those to make sure that employees are safe. Also making sure you're keeping posters in key areas that's promoting proper hygiene habits. OSHA, CDC, various government agencies have a number of great options for you, so you don't have to feel like you have to create your own. Enhanced cleaning. So create a cleaning plan, create a best practice. Is your current cleaning company able to meet those needs? Do you need to look at other cleaning companies? Are you cleaning key spaces, equipment, high touch areas more frequently? If you had a cleaning company come in once a week, is it something where you need to implement a daily high touch area and then a deep clean once a week instead. So consider those. And are there any limitations to your cleaning process? Are you able to get enough disinfectant wipes? Are you able to have enough hand sanitizer from your current vendor? Do you need to look at other possible vendors to make sure that you have enough supplies when your employees are returning? A final consideration when it comes to employee safety is, are you going to require screening? If that is questions when they come into the building, is it temperature tests? Know that while these things are allowed, these measures do come with challenges. So what does the screening look like logistically? Like, you have multiple building entrances. Can employees only come into one entrance? Do they need to arrive early so that screening can be done before they start their shift? So lots of considerations and options when you're assessing employee health.
Tracy, we did have a question just come in. So an employer has outlined various steps and what they'll be doing to attempt to protect employees, but had an employee come back and say that it's not enough. Would it be fair to give an ultimatum, whether they, hey, employee, if you don't think it's enough, you're gone, or what to do in that situation if the employees aren't comfortable with the guidelines that the company sets?
Great question, and just got off the phone with a client 5 minutes before this webinar with the exact same question. So if you feel like you have a great safety plan in place and you don't feel like there's any, listen to the employee. It's, you have the NLRA, rules to deal with there. They are talking about, protected it's a protected activity to talk about work conditions. If your work conditions legitimately are safe, the employee does have the option to resign if they don't want to return to work. But make sure that you're feeling, you're hearing their concerns, you're listening to them, you're acknowledging that this is a time where, everyone has an idea of what's safe is not safe, reminding them what steps you've taken to ensure their safety and how you care. Really responding appropriately might help minimize, losing an employee over those types of concerns. And honestly, maybe they do have a great idea that doesn't have a high cost or can be implemented and make the workplace even safer. So I think it's really important to listen to those concerns, make sure that you're implementing additional precautions if somebody comes up with a good idea. So that's a good segue into what do you do when employees have concerns. This is a time that we have never seen before, and we're all feeling differently, and some of us are handling things well, some of us are not handling things well. I tell you, every day I wake up, I feel like I don't know what my mood's going to be based on all the things that are happening in the world right now. So your employees are doing that as well. I can't stress this enough. Communicate all of your changes and expectations. Don't think employees are just going to know what they don't know. Communication is key. Most employers, all employers, we don't have all the answers. But if we're open and honest with employees, they're much more likely to transition smoothly and avoid any concerns or complaints that'll arise in this new norm. So communication is so important. Monitor employee well-being. I'm not talking about the health and temperature checks anymore. Talking about how are they really doing? How are they feeling? How are they handling things? Don't just be all about the business. So each of us is handling this differently. We all have stressors. Some of us have health concerns. Others are juggling being a teacher, parent, and employee. And what does that look like? So while they were important before all of this happened, regular check-ins, one-on-one, incredibly important to make sure that your business can maintain, good employee satisfaction during this time. In the same line, assess employee morale. So these stressors that we're having that aren't work stressors now make small workplace issues bigger. Tensions are high. And additionally, as I'm sure we've all seen on various social media platforms, everyone has a different view on the situation. And those differing views can ruffle feathers. So just like checking in and doing the one-on-ones, it's very important to maintain a positive workforce during the challenging times. Make sure leadership is aligned in communication, boosting morale, addressing any morale issues immediately, even lightening the mood to include a fun topic in meeting agendas and get employees talking about something other than the pandemic. Finally, remind employees of your anti-harassment and discrimination policies. We're seeing a lot of concerns around suspected and confirmed cases and how those employees are being treated. So ensure privacy, ensure that those employees are treated with respect and not subject to any type of harassment or discrimination based on their condition. Not going to touch much on this at all, just because we've done a variety of webinars on the topic of leave requests. But as the pandemic continues, I do anticipate and have seen an uptick in individuals requesting leave. More individuals might be contracting the virus, and employees that have had children now home from school for for a long time and now for the remainder of the school year may be wanting to use these possible leaves. So paid leave is really just the 80 hours of paid sick leave at either a full or 2/3 pay, depending on the reason the employee is taking the leave. And then there's the paid family medical leave, which expands the family medical leave, unpaid family medical leave. So it's 12 weeks at 2/3 of pay for employees who are unable to work if they need to care for a child whose school or daycare is closed. So consider having forms. You might not have had a request come through yet, but I have seen an uptick in them in the recent weeks. Consider having a form to complete. It's going to do a number of things. It helps you document that individual is out on leave, and it can be in their personnel file, but it also helps to have documentation on hand when you're going to utilize the quarterly tax credits to be reimbursed for the leave that you've paid out. Also consider, do you need new payroll codes? Is that going to make things less messy? So it's, you might have your regular pay, your overtime pay, and now you're going to add in payroll codes for the various paid sick and family leaves. Employment law compliance. We always have to, but there's different considerations as we have businesses reopen. The EEOC recently provided some updated guidance. They've been doing that throughout the last couple months. And they did state that employers may ask employees about medical conditions and potentially prevent employees with these conditions from working during the pandemic. As it's known that anyone with an underlying medical condition is at higher risk for having more severe illness from a COVID-19 case. A couple things to consider though before you just start telling employees with pre-existing conditions that they're unable to return when you reopen. You must reasonably believe that the condition will pose a direct threat to the employee's health, and then you need to undertake steps to determine if a reasonable accommodation is possible. Accommodations could be telework, job reassignment, providing enhanced protective gear or equipment, creating protective barriers in the workplace, maybe temporarily modifying an employee's work location or schedule. If there's no reasonable accommodation available, then so you have the direct threat, there's no accommodation available, then an employer may bar an employee with a known underlying condition from entering the workplace to ensure his or her safety. Something really to keep in mind though is the direct threat requirement is very high, fact-specific standard. So the employer has to do an individualized assessment based on a reasonable medical judgment about the employee's specific disability. Factors to consider would be the severity of the pandemic in the area where your business is located, the type of health condition the employee has, the employee's job duties, the likelihood of exposure that they have at the work site, and the different measures that are being taken, that the employer is taking to protect all workers. So the requirement, like I said, is really high. I definitely recommend if you are considering that there's an employee that you want to remain home due to a pre-existing condition, that you get with trusted counsel to make sure that you are really evaluating that and not putting your business at risk. Other considerations are wage and hour. So many employers we've seen adjusting roles because they don't need everyone and they're kind of changing job duties. Now when they're reopening, you need to make sure that exempt employees still qualify for their exemption. So does their salary still meet the threshold? Did the modified job duties make them fall out from one of the exemptions? And if they are no longer able to be exempt, do you need to reclassify those employees as non-exempt? Also important to keep in mind that some exempt employees might be returning on a partial basis. So if you have an employee, for example, that is going to work 4 out of 5 days, working partial hours, maybe even all 5 days, if they're an exempt employee, you have to pay them still their full salary. So what I'm seeing some employers do is if they're bringing an exempt level employee back at just a partial schedule, they do a salary reduction to account for that reduced schedule. Make sure you're communicating that to the employee, of course, not just doing it. And make sure that whatever that salary reduction is done is not going to jeopardize the exempt status. So make sure you're keeping them above the threshold. Also, you could have employees use vacation or other paid time to try to, offset the various hours they may not be working. So keep that in mind as well. I've also seen a lot of salary reductions done. Maybe it's 10, 20, 30, or even 40% for exempt level employees. Employers need to make sure that this lower rate is still meeting the salary level threshold. And again, no salary reduction should ever be done without communicating to employees. So if exempt employees, based on all of what's changed in their job duties or their salary, are now reclassified as non-exempt, employers need to make sure that they're now paying these employees for all hours worked, and that includes overtime. As the pandemic we've seen has caused a financial strain on many businesses, we recommend considering requiring that all overtime be pre-approved and having a policy in place that outlines that. One final wage consideration, I discussed earlier in the webinar about potentially implementing some sort of testing as employees are entering the workplace to ensure that they're healthy. So do know that if you're implementing something such as a temperature screening, we need to make sure that those employees are being paid for that time that they're coming in to be screened before they can start their shift. Okay, I've talked a lot about just different policies. You may have them, you may not have them, but I'll touch base on a few policies that are good to have, especially in the current situation. So telework policy, having a clear policy that outlines expectations for remote workers. I mentioned the harassment and discrimination. If you don't have an anti-harassment and discrimination policy, I highly recommend one. I'm hearing so many stories about individuals that are either suspected or have a confirmed case of COVID being treated differently. So make sure you have the policies, make sure you train your employees on them. Reasonable accommodations. So how are you going to work through individuals that need to be home during this time and go through an interactive reasonable accommodation process with them? As I just said, an overtime policy is really important. Also an off the clock policy. Lots of employees right now are maybe on a reduced work schedule or not working and are at home, but do they have a company laptop? Do they have a company cell phone? Are they checking voicemail? Are they checking email? Are they responding to a phone call here and there? Make sure that all employees know that they are going to be paid for every minute they work, and some sort of off the clock policy will help with that. Document workplace safety measures, so including your policies that you've put in place for proper cleaning, protective equipment, social distancing measures. Put these in some sort of policy that will help, ensure that you prevent the spread of the virus at your workplace.
Tracy, we did have a couple people ask if they could get a list of the policies that we just went over. I just want to let everybody know, if you want to contact Tracy or I after the presentation, we'd be happy to work with you to get you compliant with everything that you need. We'll have our contact information at the end. So to everybody who just put a question in, we'll get in touch with you after this as a thank you, but also feel free to reach out anytime to us.
Absolutely. Thanks, Emily. Also, drafting policies related to if you're implementing a health questionnaire or a temperature check process so that employees know what to expect when they come back and how their health is going to be managed. Also consider a temporary policy. While these leave requests are not going to be going on forever, they're going on for a while. And so you may want to have a temporary policy. It doesn't need to be in your formal employee handbook, but it may be an add-on addendum, just so the employees know what leave options are available to them and how you're going to manage the requests. Train your supervisors and managers. This is so important. Help them understand your current policies, your updated policies, any new policies. Make sure that you have consistency across that management team and that you present a united front to your employees. Another thing to consider is cross-training. Do you anticipate employee absences? I think every business is going to see that, whether it's employees that are out sick, whether it's employees that aren't returning because they found other work or they don't want to return at this time. Cross-training your workforce to make sure you can still manage your business with a decrease in staff. Finally, I've said this a few times so far, communicate with your employees, distribute the current and updated policies, ensure they sign an acknowledgement that they've reviewed, understand, and will adhere to them, and continue the communication about the policies regularly. We don't want it just to be a one-time communication and then they're never talked about again. We talked about a lot. Next steps, proactively plan any reopening. If you plan it in advance, I can guarantee you it's going to go a lot smoother. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Incredibly important at all layers of your organization to be communicating with your team. Maintain compliance with employment laws. We've talked about a few. There's many more. Of course, if you have questions about them, always reach out to us or other trusted counsel. Ensure you have policies in place. A lot of businesses haven't had them in place. Now's a great time to do that. And as I said, reach out to trusted counsel for guidance. The laws that are changing every day, the orders are changing every day. It's a confusing time. You pick up your phone and look at the news and there's something different constantly. So partnering with trusted counsel for guidance as you reopen is incredibly important. So thank you. Allie, any other questions come in?
No, we just had a few policy specific questions, but to any open ones right now, we will follow up after the presentation with more information, or if you have anything, like I said, our contact information will be at the end. So please, oh, there it is. Please feel free to reach out anytime to us, whether that's getting you compliant with workplace policies generally or COVID related. We're here to help.
Thank you very much, Alexis. Thank you all for attending today. Again, as she said, if you have any questions, reach out.